Unknown. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, 2,200 hours. In the thick darkness of the Solomon Islands, Private Robert Young Deere of the 164th Infantry Regiment inspects his M1 Garand rifle. His unit had landed on the island just 11 days earlier, on October 13th. They were the first United States Army formation to take part in offensive actions against the Japanese. Now, situated next to Marines who still carried bolt-action Springfield rifles, the soldiers of the 164th gripped their semi-automatic weapons, each with 8 rounds loaded in the clip. Amid the stifling humidity and the sounds of nighttime insects, a chilling noise cut through the air. Thousands of Japanese troops initiated their charge, shouting Banzai and Totsugeki at the top of their lungs. Leading this attacking force was Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto from the 29th Infantry Regiment. He pushed his platoon forward, his Type 38 Arisaka rifle, with its long 31.4-inch barrel, proving difficult to maneuver through the thick underbrush. His 5-round internal magazine held 6.5 by 50 mm Arisaka rounds, each requiring him to work the bolt-action, pull back, push forward, and then drop down. Behind him, some newer soldiers carried the Type 99 rifle, chambered for the more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge. Yet, it was still a bolt-action weapon, limited to 5 rounds before needing to reload with stripper clips. The next 12 hours of brutal combat would reveal why American infantry enjoyed a significant advantage in firepower, an advantage the Japanese did not foresee. The technological gap between the semi-automatic M1 Garand and the bolt-action Arisaka rifles had the power to shape the outcome of the battle. This conflict at Henderson Field would highlight a crucial fact of the Pacific War. While Japanese soldiers demonstrated remarkable bravery and resolve, they were burdened by outdated rifle technology from a previous era. The semi-automatic action of the M1 Garand, along with its 8-round capacity and potent .30 caliber .06 Springfield cartridge, provided American forces with a fire rate and stopping power that Japanese infantry armed with their bolt-action Arisaka rifles could not rival. This difference in small arms capabilities would be crucial. This would be echoed across countless battles in the Pacific, from the humid jungles of New Guinea to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima. It played a crucial role in the eventual victory for the American forces. The M1 Garand was the creation of John Cammers Garand, a designer with Canadian-American roots. He began his work at Springfield Armory in 1919. After spending 17 years in development, testing, and fine-tuning, the United States Army officially adopted his design on January 9, 1936. This made the United States the first country to issue a semi-automatic rifle as standard gear for its infantry. The rifle fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge. It launched a 150-grain M2 ball projectile at a speed of 2,850 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel. This generated 2,656 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The brilliance of Garand's design was its gas-operated rotating bolt system. A small amount of propellant gas was captured from a port near the muzzle. This gas drove an operating rod that cycled the action automatically. When the trigger was pulled, it fired 1 round. The gas pressure then ejected the spent case and chambered the next round, without the shooter having to do anything manually. A trained soldier could take between 40 and 50 aimed shots per minute, while a bolt-action rifle would allow for only 15 to 20 rounds per minute. The 8-round clip was loaded from above into the fixed magazine and could be reloaded in under 3 seconds by an experienced rifleman. The development was not without its difficulties. Early prototypes relied on a primer-actuated system that was not dependable. Initially, the rifle was designed for the 276 Pedersen cartridge, but General Douglas MacArthur stepped in during 1932. He insisted on using the .30-06 Springfield round to make use of existing ammunition stockpiles. This choice delayed production but turned out to be beneficial, as the powerful .30-06 cartridge delivered excellent long-range performance and stopping power. The Arisaka rifles were descended from Colonel Narakira Arisaka's original Type 30 design created in 1897. This was developed to replace the unsatisfactory Murata rifles that were in service at the time. By World War II, Japanese forces mainly utilized 2 versions, the Type 38, adopted in 1905, and the Type 99, introduced in 1939, the 2599th year of the Japanese calendar. The Type 38 fired a 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed cartridge that used a 139-grain bullet, achieving a speed of 2,500 feet per second and generating about 1,650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The Type 99 employed a more powerful 7. The 7 by 58 mm cartridge fires a 182-grain bullet at a velocity of 2,400 feet per second, delivering 2,300 foot-pounds of energy. The Arisaka variants were both bolt-action rifles, equipped with 5-round internal magazines that could be loaded using 5-round stripper clips. The Type 38 featured an impressive barrel length of 31.4 inches, making it one of the longest infantry rifles ever deployed. This length contributed to its excellent long-range accuracy. However, it was unwieldy in jungle environments, where engagements typically occurred at distances of no more than 100 yards. The Type 99, which had a shorter barrel of 25.9 inches, was more manageable. Unfortunately, it arrived too late to completely replace the Type 38 in active service. The Arisaka action was notably strong, and post-war tests showed it to be sturdier than the American Springfield, British Lee Enfield, or German Mauser actions. These rifles included an innovative safety feature that could be operated quietly. Additionally, the bolt design featured a gas escape system to protect the shooter in the event of a ruptured cartridge case. Nevertheless, these advancements could not compensate for the limitations of manual bolt operation during a time of increasing firepower. The industrial differences between the United States and Japan were vividly illustrated by their rifle production numbers. From 1936 to 1945, American factories produced around 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory was the top producer with 3.5 million rifles, followed by Winchester Repeating Arms Company, which contributed over 513,000 rifles. Other manufacturers like International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson added to production during the Korean War. Springfield Armory peaked at producing 1,000 rifles per day by January 1944, while Winchester achieved a peak of 600 rifles daily. This high output meant that nearly every American infantry soldier and Marine in the Pacific was equipped with the semi-automatic rifle by mid-1943. The allocation system within the United States military prioritized combat units. In early 1943, the Marine Corps received 22,000 M1 Garand rifles each month, despite their initial hesitation to adopt the weapon. By the end of fiscal year 1942, the Marine Corps had 62,886 M1 Garand rifles, although not all were issued to frontline units. In contrast, Japanese production painted a different story. From 1905 to 1945, Japan produced about 3 million Type 38 rifles across various arsenals, including Koshiawa, later known as Tokyo, Kakura, Nagoya, and the Mokden Arsenal in occupied Manchuria. Production of the Type 99 from 1939 to 1945 totaled approximately 3.5 million units. Manufactured at 9 different arsenals, including 2 outside Japan, production included facilities in Manchukuo and Jinzan in Korea. Despite producing over 6 million rifles, Japan never reached the levels needed to modernize their infantry weapons completely. Many second-line troops, garrison units, and naval infantry were still using Type 38 rifles by the end of the war. This created logistical issues due to the use of 2 different types of ammunition. In contrast, American M1 Garand production maintained a high level of quality throughout the war. Springfield Armory's quality control rejected any rifle that did not group within 5 inches at 100 yards. Interchangeability of parts from various manufacturers was strictly managed with detailed specifications. A damaged M1 Garand could be repaired in the field with parts from other rifles regardless of who made them. In 1942, the adoption of improved heat treatment processes actually made receiver strength stronger than in pre-war models. The finishes developed were practical rather than economical. The change from blued steel to parkerizing enhanced corrosion resistance, especially in tropical climates. Walnut stocks were often replaced with birch and other hardwoods due to shortages, but this never affected functionality. Late-war simplifications included switching from milled to stamped trigger guards. However, these changes underwent thorough testing for reliability. On the other hand, Japanese manufacturing quality declined significantly as the war went on. Early Type 99 rifles showcased impressive innovations such as chrome-lined barrels, which were the first in a military rifle. They also featured anti-aircraft sights to track aerial targets, dust covers to protect the action, and built-in wire monopods for stability. Early models had a deep blue finish, with stocks made from high-quality Japanese hardwood and precise inletting. By 1944, these improvements disappeared due to production pressures and material shortages. Last-ditch rifles showed rough machining, simplified fixed rear sights to replace the complex ladder sight, wooden butt plates instead of metal, and inferior wood with poor fitting. Some final production rifles lacked any kind of finishing, showing visible tool marks on all metal surfaces. The chrome lining was eliminated as chromium became rare, and monopods were dropped as well. The imperial chrysanthemum marking was stamped in a rough manner, instead of being rolled precisely. The M1 Garand semi-automatic action offered several tactical benefits beyond just a fast rate of fire. After firing each shot, the soldier could keep his sight picture and cheek weld intact, while the rifle cycled automatically. This allowed for quicker target reacquisition and more accurate follow-up shots. The operating rod, activated by gas pressure tapped near the muzzle, had enough power to operate reliably, even when exposed to mud, sand, volcanic ash, or the build-up of carbon from extended use. The end-block clip system faced criticism for its unique ejection sound, which some claimed alerted enemies that the rifle was empty. However, it allowed the fastest reload compared to any other military rifle of the time. A trained soldier could reload in under 3 seconds, while using a bolt-action rifle with stripper clips took a skilled individual 5 to 7 seconds. The ejected clip also gave instant tactile and audible proof that the rifle was empty. This feature helped avoid the confusion that could happen with rifles that did not signal an empty magazine. Despite weighing 9.5 pounds, which is heavy by today's standards, the weight helped absorb the substantial recoil of the .30 caliber cartridge. This made for quick and accurate follow-up shots. The rifle's overall length of 43 6/10 inches was well balanced, with weight evenly distributed between the heavy barrel and solid wooden stock. The 2-stage military trigger, although not match-grade, delivered dependable performance that soldiers could learn to control with practice. In contrast, the Arisaka rifles, despite their sturdy design and potential accuracy, faced limitations due to their bolt-action mechanism, which became critical in the combat in the Pacific. After each shot, a soldier had to manually cycle the bolt through 4 different actions. This involved lifting the bolt handle, pulling it back to remove the spent cartridge, pushing it forward to load a fresh round from the magazine into the chamber, and then locking the handle down. This entire process disrupted the shooter's firing stance and alignment, taking 2 to 3 seconds, even for an experienced soldier. The Type 38's lengthy design at 50.3 inches proved to be particularly impractical for jungle combat. Japanese soldiers often found that the rifle would get caught on vines, making it hard to aim at targets in thick vegetation. It was nearly impossible to use effectively in bunkers or fortified settings. The M1 Garand rifle offered excellent long-range accuracy with minimal bullet drop. However, this advantage turned into a disadvantage since combat distances rarely exceeded 100 yards and often happened at close range. The 5-round magazine meant that Japanese soldiers had to reload significantly more often than their American counterparts to fire the same amount of rounds. Reloading with stripper clips involved opening the bolt, correctly positioning the clip, pressing the rounds down into the magazine while removing the clip, and then closing the bolt. This entire process took about 5 to 7 seconds under ideal circumstances and much longer under the stress of combat or in awkward positions. The .306 Springfield cartridge used by the M1 Garand was already standard across the United States military for various weapons, including the M1903 Springfield rifle, the M1917 Browning machine gun, the M1919 Browning machine gun, and the Browning automatic rifle. This commonality made logistics much simpler. A single type of ammunition could supply rifles, automatic rifles, and machine guns. The rimless design of the cartridges fed reliably from clips, belts, and magazines. American ammunition production was impressive. By 1943, the Lake City Army ammunition plant alone could produce around 200 million rounds each year. Other facilities, such as the Frankfurt Arsenal and the Denver Ordnance Plant, contributed hundreds of millions more. Quality control maintained consistent ballistics, with the M2 ball ammunition showing a velocity variation of less than 40 feet per second between lots. Japanese forces faced a more complicated ammunition situation. Units with Type 38 rifles needed 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed ammunition, while those using Type 99 rifles required 7.7 by 58 mm rounds. Although the 6.5 mm round generated less recoil and allowed soldiers to carry more ammunition, it proved insufficient against enemies in covered positions and lacked stopping power. The 7.7 mm round addressed these shortcomings but created challenges in supply. This dual-caliber system led to ongoing logistics issues. There were documented cases, such as with the 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal, where they received 7.7 mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles. This rendered both the weapons and the ammunition useless. Similar mix-ups happened during the campaign in the Philippines and on remote island garrisons. The semi-rimmed design of the 6.5 mm cartridge sometimes caused feeding problems in tropical conditions where ammunition became corroded. The unit arrived at Guadalcanal on October 13th, 1942. They brought with them something the Marines were eager for: M1 Garand rifles. The Marines, who were mainly using M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifles, watched with a mix of envy and doubt as the Army soldiers unloaded their semi-automatic weapons. During the intense battle for Henderson Field on October 24th and 25th, 1942, the benefits of the M1 Garand became clear. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page, a Marine armed with a machine gun instead of a rifle, fought alongside the soldiers of the 164th Infantry Regiment and witnessed their firepower firsthand. Private First Class James Cass of Company M later recalled, "The Japanese came at us in waves, hardly visible in the darkness except for the shine of their bayonets. With our Garands, we were able to fire 8 rounds at them before they covered 30 yards. Each man was like a machine gun section. We would fire, the rifle would cycle, and we would fire again. There was no need to work a bolt or break our sight picture. Just squeeze, boom, squeeze, boom, squeeze, boom, 8 times before reloading." The soldiers of the 164th Company were gradually added to the line as the Japanese attack intensified. Their powerful semi-automatic fire helped stabilize the positions that were starting to falter. Colonel Bryant Moore, who commanded the 164th, reported that his men fired over 250,000 rounds of .3 caliber 06 ammunition during the 2-day battle. Japanese bodies piled up in front of the positions held by the 164th, many killed by the rapid and precise fire from the M1 Garands. Marine Private Robert Leckie, who later wrote the memoir Helmet for My Pillow, observed the Army troops in action. He noted, "We thought they were inexperienced, those dog faces with their new rifles. But when the Japanese charged, those Garands roared with a sound we had never heard before. It was a continuous roar, not the sporadic crack of our Springfields." Sergeant Masao Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Division Sendai, managed to survive the October assault at Guadalcanal. In his post-war memoir, found in Japanese military records, he wrote, "We were told the Americans were soft, that our Yamato spirit would overcome their material advantages. Our officers insisted that 1 Japanese soldier was worth 10 Americans. But when we charged their lines that October night, it felt like running into a wall of lead. American soldiers seemed to have automatic weapons. Our Arisaka rifles, which we used like our fathers had in the Russo-Japanese War, felt outdated. We would fire a single shot, work the bolt while taking cover, and then fire again. During that time, the Americans could fire 4 or 5 rounds. Watanabe observed that Japanese tactics designed against Chinese forces, often equipped with older weapons or low ammunition, were fatal against American firepower. The Banzai charge that had frightened Chinese conscripts collapsed under a barrage of American rifles that never stopped firing. We could not close in to use our bayonets. Our supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing as we were cut down just 50 meters from their lines. Lieutenant Hiroshi Takahashi of the 230th Infantry Regiment shared another view in a letter found on his body. He wrote that the American automatic rifles were devastating. Each soldier could fire as quickly as our light machine guns. When we advanced, it felt like we were attacking a position held solely by machine guns. Our men fell before they could work their rifle bolts for a second shot. In December 1943, Marines of the 1st Marine Division landed at Cape Gloucester in heavy rain, fully equipped with M1 Garand rifles after their earlier experience on Guadalcanal. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, who later wrote With the Old Breed, described the M1's performance in those brutal conditions. He stated that the Garand was the most reliable weapon they had. In rain that poured down like waterfalls and mud that gripped like quicksand, the rifle kept firing. The Japanese, with their bolt-action rifles, could not compete with our firing rate. When they tried to set up in the jungle, we could unleash so much firepower that leaves fell like rain. Marine Sergeant John Basilone, who would earn the Medal of Honor for his actions on Guadalcanal, also used an M1 Garand as his personal weapon. He remarked that the Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men armed with bolt-action rifles. In the jungle, where one might only catch a glimpse of the enemy for a brief moment, the ability to fire multiple shots without working a bolt was crucial. It could mean the difference between killing the enemy or allowing him to escape and attack you later. During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the largest Banzai charge of the Pacific War saw over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assault. In a desperate pre-dawn attack, American forces stood firm. On July 7th, Private First Class Harold Agger Holm of the 4th Marine Division, with his M1 Garand, played a key role in repelling a massive assault. Corporal John Miller recounted the chaos, saying, "The Japanese advanced shoulder to shoulder, screaming loudly. Our Garands kept firing without pause. We fired as quickly as we could pull the trigger. The constant ping of empty clips ejecting sounded like deadly music. The Japanese, armed with their bolt-action rifles, couldn't match our firing rate. They might get off 1 shot or, if they were fortunate, 2 before our semi-automatics took them down." In September 1944, on Peleliu, the 1st Marine Division encountered Japanese forces that had adapted from previous defeats. Instead of launching Banzai charges, they held fortified positions. However, even in defense, the bolt-action Arisaka was no match. Marine Corporal R.V. Bergen noted, "When we located an enemy position, we could bombard it with rifle fire. 4 or 5 of us with Garands could unleash 40 rounds into a cave entrance while they managed only 5 or 6 shots back. We kept their heads down, allowing other Marines to advance with flamethrowers or explosives." American training for the M1 Garand focused on using the rifle's semi-automatic feature while ensuring accuracy. Across various training camps in the United States, including Fort Benning and Camp Perry, soldiers spent weeks perfecting their skills. The qualification course required engaging targets from 100 to 500 yards, emphasizing quick target engagement and smooth trigger control. The Army's field manual detailed that soldiers should maintain a sustained rate of 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training stressed maintaining proper sight alignment since the semi-automatic action allowed soldiers to stay in position. They learned to shoot, observe their impact, make adjustments, and resume a firing quickly, fully utilizing the M1's capabilities. Ammunition for training was plentiful. Basic trainees fired a minimum of 210 rounds for qualification, with even more for advanced training. Combat units gearing up for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier. This rigorous live-fire training developed muscle memory and confidence that were vital in combat. The Marine Corps initially, skepticism surrounded the M1 Garand due to fears about wasting ammunition and lowering marksmanship standards. However, this prompted the development of even more rigorous training programs. Marine doctrine focused on accuracy and the volume of fire. It stressed rapid, aimed shots that utilized the M1's semi-automatic action while still adhering to traditional marksmanship excellence. Japanese marksmanship training, grounded in samurai traditions of precision and discipline, promoted the philosophy of 1 shot, 1 kill, known as Ichigeki Atsu. This principle embodied both a warrior's spiritual focus and the practical constraints of bolt-action rifles. Japanese soldiers trained extensively at long ranges, valuing the Type 38's exceptional accuracy as a key strength. The Imperial Japanese Army's training manual proclaimed that The spirit of the attack must be the primary weapon of the infantry. The rifle and bayonet are merely extensions of the warrior's will. This focus on spirituality over material capabilities would have dire consequences against American firepower. Japanese soldiers engaged in vigorous bayonet training, practicing movements daily. The length of the Type 38 made it theoretically superior for bayonet fighting. Yet, combat in the Pacific seldom provided the long-range opportunities for which Japanese soldiers had trained. The dense jungles of Guadalcanal, New Guinea, and other battlegrounds restricted visibility to just a few yards. The Banzai charges that had previously succeeded against poorly equipped Chinese forces or colonial troops faced devastating failure against the rapid fire of semi-automatic rifles. The sound of the M1 Garand became a psychological weapon itself. The rapid, rhythmic crack of its semi-automatic fire, combined with the distinctive ping of ejecting clips, had a demoralizing effect on Japanese troops. A captured Japanese training document from 1943 advised soldiers that the American automatic rifles sounded like many machine guns firing. Soldiers were encouraged not to be disheartened by the volume of fire. They were reminded of their spiritual superiority and urged to advance with determination. However, this spiritual superiority fell short when faced with the harsh reality of warfare. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura, captured on Saipan, recounted that they were told Americans were cowards relying on machines instead of the warrior spirit. Yet, those rifles fired without interruption. It felt like we were battling a machine, not fellow soldiers. Our leaders ordered us to charge with bayonets, but we fell before we got close enough to use them. Meanwhile, American forces grew highly confident because of their firepower. Marine Corporal James Russell said, "Knowing you could fire 8 rounds as fast as you could pull the trigger made you feel unstoppable. When the Japanese charged, there was no panic. You just shot until they stopped coming, or you heard that ping telling you to reload." At the squad level, the advantage of the M1 Garand became very clear. An American rifle squad of 12 men, armed with 10 M1 Garands and 2 Browning automatic rifles, could unleash 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute during sustained fire. In contrast, a comparable Japanese squad with Arisaka rifles might hit 150 to 180 rounds per minute, assuming soldiers trained to maximize bolt-action speed. This difference dramatically changed tactics for small units. American squads could fire and maneuver effectively. One fire team would lay down suppressive fire while another team advanced. The volume of accurate semi-automatic fire kept the enemy suppressed, allowing American forces to close in and take out Japanese positions. Japanese squads, hindered by their bolt-action rifles, struggled to provide adequate suppressive fire and maintain mobility. At the company level, usually containing 200 men, the difference became even more drastic. An American rifle company could unleash devastating defensive fire against Japanese assaults. During the battle for Henderson Field from October 24th to 25th, companies of the 164th Infantry Regiment showcased this ability. Company G of the 164th Infantry reported using 30,000 rounds of Tholton 3006 ammunition in just one night, averaging 150 rounds per man while facing only minor casualties. The numbers were undeniable. A Japanese battalion of 800 men launching a Banzai charge faced American companies capable of delivering 8,000 aimed rounds per minute. Even with the challenges of darkness and fear, the sheer volume of semi-automatic fire created kill zones that human bravery could not overcome. The superiority of the M1 Garand played a significant role in the success of the American island hopping strategy. American forces could land on islands controlled by Japan, assured in their ability to establish and hold beachheads against counterattacks. The firepower of infantry armed with the M1 rifle allowed smaller forces to secure larger areas. This enabled quick buildup of troops for offensive operations across various islands including Tarawa, Kwajalein, Anuki, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. This pattern repeated itself. Japanese forces, unable to keep up with American firepower, turned to increasingly desperate strategies. Banzai charges gave way to more defensive tactics, yet Even from their fortified positions, the slow rate of fire from bolt-action rifles often prevented Japanese soldiers from seizing opportunities when Americans showed vulnerabilities during assaults. The Japanese military's reliance on bolt-action rifles was largely rooted in their victory in the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. In this conflict, Japanese infantry, armed with Type 30 and Type 35 Arisaka rifles, overcame Russian forces due to better training, discipline, and tactical innovation. The battles at Mukden and the siege of Port Arthur seemed to affirm the idea that Japanese warrior spirit triumphed over material advantages. However, this success led to a significant blind spot regarding technological advancements. The military establishment in Japan, primarily run by officers who viewed the Russo-Japanese War as Japan's emergence as a great power, did not recognize the profound changes in warfare. World War I had shown the importance of firepower over mere numbers. Yet Japan, having not engaged significantly in that war, failed to learn its lessons. The United States' adoption of the M1 Garand was a reflection of insights gained from World War I. General John J. Dayfury, Pershing, who led the American Expeditionary Force, witnessed the devastating impact of automatic weapons during the conflict in France. In 1918, he called for the development of a semi-automatic rifle, stating that the soldier who can deliver the most accurate fire in the shortest time will dominate the battlefield of the future. This directive initiated a development process that eventually led to the M1 Garand. The United States dedicated nearly 20 years to refining the design, conducting trials, and establishing the industrial capacity for mass production. By 1936, when the M1 rifle was officially adopted, America had not only developed a superior firearm, but also created a comprehensive system for its production, maintenance, and supply. Eventually, Japan acknowledged the need for semi-automatic rifles and began working on indigenous designs. In the 1930s, Japan made attempts to develop various firearms. This included the rifle designed by Kajiro Nambu and several gas-operated prototypes. However, these projects were not a priority. Resources went towards aircraft, naval vessels, and other programs that were considered more important. When Japan finally tried to replicate the M1 Garand, they created what they called the Type 4 rifle, though it is often incorrectly referred to as Type 5. They produced only 250 sets of parts and managed to assemble about 100 to 125 rifles before the end of the war. The Type 4 was chambered for 7.7mm Japanese ammunition. It used a 10-round internal magazine that was loaded with two 5-round stripper clips. This showed that Japan recognized the advantages of the M1 but did not have the industrial capability for mass production. The firepower comparison revealed a clear advantage for the United States. The M1 Garand, firing M2 ball ammunition, delivered 2,656 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. A trained soldier could fire 40 rounds per minute, producing 106,240 foot-pounds of energy each minute. In contrast, a bolt-action Type 99 Arisaka fired the 7.7mm round, which delivered 2,300 foot-pounds per shot. At a practical firing rate of 15 rounds per minute, it resulted in only 34,500 foot-pounds per minute, which was less than one-third of the M1's energy output. When it came to trajectory, the .306 Springfield was more effective at typical Pacific combat distances, nose and alaire, 17,000 and 30s and head, although it had more drop than the 6.5mm Arisaka at extreme ranges. At 300 yards, an unusually long distance for jungle warfare, the .306 dropped 13.5 inches from line of sight while still retaining 1,900 foot-pounds of energy. This was enough to penetrate multiple layers of jungle vegetation and incapacitate enemy soldiers. The 6.5mm Arisaka dropped only 11 inches at the same range, but retained just 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, often not enough to penetrate cover. Tests conducted by the United States Army at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1940 measured the M1's advantage. In controlled trials, soldiers with M1 Garands consistently fired 24 aimed shots per minute at a distance of 200 yards, achieving 90% accuracy on man-sized targets. Meanwhile, soldiers using 1903 Springfields which operated similarly to the Arisaka, managed only 10 aimed shots with 85% accuracy. In rapid-fire scenarios simulating a sudden attack, soldiers equipped with the M1 could engage 3 separate targets in the time it took bolt-action users to engage one. Additional testing evaluated sustained fire over longer durations. After 5 minutes of continuous firing, soldiers with the M1 continued to demonstrate clear advantages. Soldiers using the M1 Garand maintained around 80% of their initial firing rate. In contrast, those using bolt-action rifles saw their rate drop to 60% because they became fatigued from working the bolt. The semi-automatic M1 only required movement of the trigger finger, while the bolt-action rifle demanded more extensive movements from the entire arm and shoulder. Combat statistics from battles in the Pacific showed clear differences. At Guadalcanal, Army units with M1 Garands used an average of 150 to 200 rounds per soldier each day during heavy combat. Meanwhile, Marine units still armed with Springfield rifles used between 60 and 80 rounds per soldier under similar conditions. This did not reflect wasteful ammunition usage. Rather, it highlighted the M1's effectiveness in hitting fast-moving targets. Japanese forces, on the other hand, rarely fired more than 40 to 50 rounds per soldier each day. This limitation stemmed from both their ammunition supply and the mechanical restrictions of their bolt-action rifles. Captured reports from Japanese soldiers often mentioned shortages of ammunition. Even when they had enough ammunition, the slow rate of fire from their rifles restricted their usage. Throughout the war, captured Japanese military documents revealed a growing acknowledgement of American firepower superiority. A report from Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, who led the 17th Army at Guadalcanal, noted in November 1942 that enemy rifle fire had both density and accuracy beyond their expectations. He stated that each enemy soldier seemed to be equipped with an automatic weapon. Japanese forces could not achieve fire superiority even when they had numerical advantages. He recommended focusing on night operations and infiltration tactics to counter the enemy's firepower edge. By 1944, Japanese tactical thinking had shifted to recognize the material superiority of the United States. Instruction for the crucial battle given to the defenders of the Marina Islands warned that the enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns created an impenetrable wall of fire during the day. They stated that all attacks should occur at night or under poor weather conditions. Daytime movement would lead to destruction. In January 1945, Lieutenant General Tadamachi Kuribayashi, a noted defender of Iwo Jima, remarked that American automatic rifles were exceptional weapons. He pointed out that each American soldier had firepower equivalent to 3 or 4 of their riflemen. He cautioned against wasting lives in fruitless Banzai charges against such formidable firepower. Instead, he proposed that they should make the enemy pay for every meter of territory from well-fortified positions. The strategy of defense in depth prolonged the fighting but could not counter American material superiority. The Japanese made several efforts to enhance infantry firepower. The Type 100 submachine gun, introduced in 1942, aimed to provide automatic fire capability. Yet, only about 27,000 units were produced by the end of the war, which was not enough to make a significant difference. Additionally, this weapon used the relatively weak 8mm Nambu pistol cartridge. It lacked the range and stopping power needed for combat in the Pacific. More telling was Japan's attempt to replicate the M1 Garand rifle. When American forces took control of the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they found evidence of the Type 4 rifle program. Engineers at Yokosuka had reverse-engineered captured M1 Garand rifles. They modified the design to use Japanese 7.7mm ammunition and to feed from a 10-round internal magazine that was loaded with standard 5-round stripper clips. The Japanese had even made improvements, such as adding a rubber recoil pad and a last-round bolt hold-open feature. Despite these advancements, Japanese industries struggled to mass-produce this complex design. They manufactured parts for roughly 250 rifles, but only about 100 to 125 were fully assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program showed that Japanese military engineers recognized the advantages of the M1 Garand, but lacked the industrial capability to produce it at a meaningful scale. Furthermore, Japanese military culture resisted prioritizing material factors over spiritual ones. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a staff officer who served in various theaters, stated after the war that they understood the Americans had superior weapons. However, admitting this would have undermined troop morale. They had to maintain a belief in spiritual superiority, even as their soldiers fell to American automatic weapons. This cultural resistance also influenced training. Even as late as 1944, Japanese infantry training focused more on bayonet practice and night infiltration than on marksmanship. The official infantry manual allocated 3 pages to rifle marksmanship, while dedicating 12 pages to spiritual preparation and bayonet fighting. This disparity reflected deeply ingrained beliefs about warfare that technical realities could not easily change. The Battle of Okinawa from April to June 1945 ultimately tested American firepower against Japanese determination. This battle unfolded right at Japan's doorstep. In what would become the bloodiest battle in the Pacific, 180,000 American troops faced 120,000 Japanese defenders. Led by Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushima, the Japanese had learned from their earlier defeats. Rather than launching reckless banzai charges, they set up extensive defensive positions in the rocky terrain of Okinawa. However, even with these defenses, the limitations of bolt-action rifles became crucial. As American forces moved forward, Japanese defenders armed with Arisaka rifles struggled to provide enough firepower to halt the advance. Private First Class Desmond Doss, a medic and conscientious objector who later earned the Medal of Honor, shared his experience. He described the sound of American rifles covering his rescue efforts as a continuous roar. The Garands fired so rapidly that they kept the Japanese heads down while he went out to help the wounded. He said that if the Japanese had all used bolt-action rifles, he couldn't have saved those men. On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only significant counteroffensive in the battle. 5,000 Japanese soldiers coordinated an attack aimed at breaking through American lines. The assault began at 4:30 a.m. with the largest artillery barrage the Japanese managed in the Pacific War, 12,000 rounds, in just 30 minutes. As Japanese infantry emerged and charged across open ground, they were met with overwhelming American firepower. Private First Class Martin Brennan from the 17th Infantry Regiment recalled, "They came at us in waves, but not the wild banzai charges we'd seen before. These were organized attacks with fire support, but our Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more shots. The noise was incredible. The Japanese, using their bolt-action rifles, could only fire once or maybe twice before being cut down by the rapid fire of American troops. The attack broke against American firepower, resulting in horrific Japanese losses, 4,000 dead compared to 714 American casualties. The rapid firing of thousands of M1 Garands, along with automatic weapons and artillery, created killing fields where Japanese bravery could not overcome their material disadvantages. Even when Japanese soldiers reached American lines, the decisive close-range firepower advantage of semi-automatic rifles made a significant difference. Sergeant William Manchester, who went on to become a noted historian, fought at Okinawa with the 29th Marines. He wrote, "The M1 rifle was our best friend." In the chaos of close combat, being able to fire 8 times without needing to work a bolt saved countless American lives. I witnessed Japanese soldiers struggle with their bolt-action rifles while under fire. Their hands trembled as they fumbled with the mechanism, while our soldiers simply kept pulling triggers as they planned for Operation Downfall. The invasion of Japan set to start with Operation Olympic in November 1945. Military strategists recognized the importance of the M1 Garand. They studied the casualty rates from Okinawa and concluded that American forces would need significantly greater firepower to overcome anticipated Japanese resistance on their home islands. They planned to produce 500,000 replacement M1 rifles for the operation, with Springfield Armory and Winchester ramping up production to a total of 2,000 rifles each day by August 1945. International Harvester was scheduled to begin production at a third facility. The ammunition needs were enormous. Planners estimated a requirement of 100 million rounds each month for rifles alone, reflecting the expected fire volume from troops equipped with M1 rifles. Intelligence reports indicated that the Japanese defense would have 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands, and millions more distributed to civilian militia units. Many of these were training rifles, outdated models, or last-minute single-shot weapons. To Type 99 substitute standard rifles made in 1945 were so poorly made that American intelligence doubted their safety for users. American planners believed that each invasion beach would need to suppress Japanese positions with naval gunfire and aerial bombardment, followed by assault troops whose M1 Garands would deliver the necessary fire to overcome defenders. Studies of battles in the Pacific indicated that American forces with semi-automatic rifles experienced 40% fewer casualties than expected for those armed with bolt-action rifles in similar situations. Aware of their firepower shortcomings, the Japanese planned to use suicide tactics, employing civilians as human shields and engaging in close-quarters combat in cities where their rifle disadvantages could be lessened. Secret Japanese plans uncovered after the war unveiled desperate measures, such as providing bamboo spears to civilians, deploying suicide swimmers with explosive charges, and even efforts to spread biological weapons. The Arisaka rifle, once a source of pride for the Imperial Army, had become just one part of a desperate defense. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki brought the war to a close before Operation Downfall began. Post-war studies indicated that American casualties could have reached between 500,000 and 1 million, while Japanese losses might have been in the millions. The firepower advantage of the M1 Garand would have been crucial, but would have led to a heavy toll in lives on both sides. The success of the M1 Garand shaped military rifle development around the world. The Soviet Union, which faced challenges with the limited production of its SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle during World War II, developed the SKS carbine, taking inspiration from captured M1 Garands. China's Type 56 carbine was essentially a reproduction of the Soviet SKS. France created the MAS-49, learning lessons from both the M1 Garand and their own pre-war semi-automatic projects. Even Britain, known for being cautious with the adoption of new small arms and content with their Lee Enfield rifles during the war, began to develop semi-automatic rifles right after the war ended. The Belgian FN-49, the Swiss Stag Bur 57, and the Italian BM-59 all incorporated insights gained from America's semi-automatic success in World War II. The M1 Garand continued to be used during the Korean War, where it again outperformed the bolt-action rifles carried by Chinese and North Korean troops. In the early days of that conflict, American forces in Korea, equipped with M1 Garands and supported by automatic weapons, successfully halted large-scale Chinese human wave assaults that were reminiscent of Japanese Banzai charges. The rifle remained in service until it was gradually replaced by the M14 in the late 1950s. In an ironic twist of history, the United States provided the newly established Japanese self-defense forces with M1 Garand rifles in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had once confronted this weapon now trained with it, encountering firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had faced. The Japanese self-defense force received around 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs. Japanese veterans interviewed in the 1960s frequently pointed to American firepower, particularly the M1 Garand, as a critical factor in their defeat. Saburo Sakai, Japan's top surviving fighter ace, remarked, "We could match American courage, we could match American tactics, but we could never match American firepower. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of our soldiers." Today, both the M1 Garand and Arisaka rifles are highly sought after by collectors, though for different reasons. The marksmanship program has provided over 500,000 surplus M1 Garand rifles to American citizens since it started. This makes it one of the most popular military collectibles. The unique ping sound of the rifle has become iconic in popular culture. It has appeared in numerous war films, television shows, and video games. The M1 Garand is often referred to as the greatest battle weapon ever created. General Patton's famous remark about it remains undisputed among World War II infantry weapons. Today, shooting competitions still hold M1 Garand matches, with the rifle demonstrating impressive accuracy even by modern standards. Japanese Arisaka rifles, especially those with intact imperial chrysanthemum markings, are considered valuable collectibles. The chrysanthemum symbolizes the emperor and was usually ground off rifles before surrender, making intact examples rare and sought after. Modern tests have shown that the Arisaka action is incredibly strong, even stronger than the Mauser or Springfield actions. However, this strength could not compensate for the inherent disadvantage of its bolt-action operation. Interestingly, both rifles have seen combat in the 21st century. M1 Garand rifles have been used in conflicts in the Middle East, supplied long ago through military assistance programs. Arisaka rifles have been reported in use by insurgent forces in Afghanistan and Myanmar, demonstrating the enduring durability of the design, even if it is now tactically outdated. On that October night in 1942, at Henderson Field, Private Robert Young Deere of the 164th Infantry Regiment and thousands of other American soldiers showcased the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire. They were illustrating a key principle of modern warfare. Technological superiority, backed by industrial production, could influence the outcome of battles, regardless of individual bravery or resolve. The M1 Garand could deliver 40 to 50 accurate shots per minute, compared to the Arisaka's 15 to 20. It fired 8 rounds before needing to reload, while the Arisaka managed only 5. The semi-automatic operation of the M1 Garand contrasted sharply with the manual bolt action of the Arisaka. This difference in firepower could halt a Banzai charge, while the single shots from the Arisaka required a break in sight to chamber the next round. These numerical advantages across millions of individual firefights, from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, significantly contributed to the outcome of the Pacific War. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, who led a charge on October 24, 1942, with his Type 38 Arisaka, did not survive to witness the dawn. Despite its impressive accuracy and solid construction, the Arisaka rifle's smooth bolt action and sturdy receiver could not stand up to the torrent of semi-automatic fire that met his advance. After the battle, his rifle was found with 3 rounds still in the magazine. He could only fire it twice while covering a distance of 100 yards under the fierce fire from M1 Garands. Surrounding him were dozens of his men, most with full or nearly full magazines in their Arisakas, having been cut down before they could fire back effectively. The comparison between the M1 Garand and the Arisaka rifles reveals a greater truth about World War II in the Pacific. Courage and determination, while admirable and essential, were not enough to overcome the basic math of firepower. By the end of the war, the United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands, ensuring that nearly every American rifleman had access to semi-automatic firepower. Japan, despite producing over 6.5 million rifles in total, remained limited by the bolt-action design and could never match the volume of accurate fire generated by semi-automatic rifles. General George S. Patton's view of the M1 Garand as the greatest battle implement ever made was not just an exaggeration, but a mathematical reality. From the humid jungles of Guadalcanal, where the rifle first demonstrated its effectiveness in American hands, to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, where Marines deployed it to neutralize Japanese strongholds, the M1 Garand proved itself as more than a rifle. It became a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a significant advantage in the most challenging theater of the world's most devastating war. The distinct ping of an ejecting en-bloc clip became the sound of American victory in the Pacific. It signified that 8 enemy soldiers would never threaten American positions, that another Japanese stronghold had been subdued, another island secured, and another step was taken toward Tokyo Bay. In contrast, the bolt-action Arisaka, despite its strengths and accuracy, was merely clinging to outdated technology from the previous war. Ultimately, the Pacific War was not decided by one weapon or battle, but by the combined impact of American industrial power and technological superiority. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most apparent symbol of this advantage at the level of the individual soldier. A Marine using an M1 Garand had the firepower equivalent to that of 3 enemy soldiers. This advantage was something that no level of spiritual training or warrior tradition could match. A Japanese soldier, despite being brave, dedicated and skilled, could only operate his rifle bolt so quickly. In modern warfare, a higher rate of fire combined with accuracy meant survival. The Arisaka rifles now sit in museums and private collections. They are respected for their quality and historical significance. Similarly, the M1 Garand has also become a part of history, though many still work perfectly on rifle ranges across America today. However, during their era, particularly in the intense battles across the Pacific, one rifle clearly outperformed the other. The semi-automatic rifle turned every American soldier into a source of firepower on their own. This advantage spread out over the vast Pacific theater and played a crucial role in ensuring Allied victory. In the end, the final word was not about courage or spirit, but rather about the mechanical precision of gas-operated semi-automatic fire. 8 rounds could be fired with one pull of the trigger. Then, that distinctive ping would signal the time to reload and carry on the fight.